Therefore, those who listen for the sake of truth of Dhamma, which the Acharya is displaying in a true and valid way, have a means of knowing and of getting rid of, and this is the result that comes, and this result is their confirmation and guarantee. Diseases which are cured by medicines, and kilesas which are got rid of by Dhamma, are both instances of natural processes which are used in the world and in Dhamma respectively. The exceptions are, of course, the disease which does not listen to the medicine, and the type of kilesas which will not look at Dhamma. Wherever such a situation exists and arises, it is bound to lead to ruin inescapably. So such people are said to be beyond hope. Chapter 15. The Kammaṭṭhāna Bhikkhus' Ways of Behavior. Behaving in economic ways. The Thutanga Bhikkhus, and in particular Venerable Ajaan, have always tended to be fastidiously careful and economical with their possessions and the things which they use. Venerable Ajaan was never wasteful, and this he maintained without exception throughout. However many of the requisites he had, and other things which were helpful in his way of life, he never used them in an ostentatious way, and he always kept up these practices consistently. But when it came to giving help to other bhikkhus, whatever he had, and however much, he was ready to give all of it, and he was never seen to keep back and accumulate things. He used to give things away to help the bhikkhus, novices, the elder monks, upasakas, the poor lay followers, and others who came to see him, and it seemed to all of us who knew him that his citta was brimful with metta and compassion for the whole world without limit. As for the requisites and other things that he himself wore and used, he acted in a different way, for he acted as if he was a destitute bhikkhu, as if he had nothing of any value on him at all. His 3 robes and bathing cloth were all worn and torn, and one could see that they were made up of bits and pieces put together and patched and mended all over. When one first saw them, one could not help feeling a bit upset and sorry, because it was so unusual to see such a thing in the Sangha in Thailand. In fact, Venerable Ajaan was probably the first to do such a thing nowadays, for he tried to keep on patching and mending his robes until there was hardly anything but patches left, until the substance of the original cloth had become rotten and entirely disappeared, and it looked as if it was a robe made up entirely of patches of new cloth sewn together. Thus the robe, being made of bits of cloth of different shades of color, appeared mottled like the stripes of a tiger or the spots of a leopard. When the robe finally became unfit to wear, he still would not throw it away, but used it first as a towel or as foot rags, and afterwards for other things where it would still be of some value, until finally it was torn to bits and so broken up that there was nothing more that one could do with it. Only then would he agree to throw it away. Whatever cloth it was, whether his 3 principal robes which he wore, or any other cloth that he used, if it was torn it had to be patched up and mended, until finally it became offensive in the sight of most people. For people had never seen anyone act like this in Thailand, where there has always been plenty of the necessities of life. So people forget themselves and naturally tend to be extravagant and opulent, even amongst the poor. But Venerable Ajaan was never concerned about other people blaming and praising him for acting in this way. Even with the various utensils and other things which were used in the monastery, such as the bamboo buckets for scooping up water, tin cans, water scoops, and all sorts of other things, for when any of them were damaged, he would take them and mend them or adapt them to some new purpose where they would be of some use, until finally they reached a state where they were beyond recovery, when he would consent to throw them away. In looking after his possessions, and other things which were used either in the wat or the hut where he stayed, he was very strict, for everything had to be put away properly or arranged in an orderly and tidy manner, not just thrown down anywhere so that they may be lost or get in the way and be a nuisance about the place. If in putting anything away after using it someone put it in the wrong place or improperly, he would ask and find out who had done it, and then immediately rebuke and scold him and teach him not to do that again. Once there was a bhikkhu who had some doubts in his mind, or maybe he just wanted to find out how Venerable Ajaan would react, and he asked him, "As far as your possessions and the other things are concerned, it is not important. But when it comes to your outer robe, your sanghati, your inner robe, your chivara, and the skirt robe, the sabong, which are a bhikkhu's most important requisites, Venerable Ajaan should use the new robes which the lay supporters give, so as to respond to their gifts of faith. For Venerable Ajaan is not hard up, nor without support, and people often come here with faith and give all the requisites. As for your old robes, you should throw them out, so that others who want them could take them as objects of reverence, so please give them away. But you should not keep using them until they are all torn and patched up everywhere, so that they give a mottled appearance like a leopard walking past a marketplace, which is how it is at present. For when your followers see you like this, they feel uncomfortable and ashamed in the face of the villagers who come here all the time to pay homage and give dana to Venerable Ajaan. For they all give plenty of dana willingly, of all kinds, every time, and it is not as though we were so hard up that you need to be very economical in the use of your robes, patching and mending them as you do at present. This makes us feel too ashamed for Venerable Ajaan, and we would rather that you not do this. In fact, we would like Venerable Ajaan to act in a way which is more appropriate to your renown as an Acharya who teaches people from all over the country. I have made this request to Venerable Ajaan with sincere respect, faith, and affection. But when I see Venerable Ajaan wearing robes and using things which are torn, worn out, all patched up and mended the whole time without ever changing them for new ones, even when we have got them, it makes me feel inferior and ashamed in the face of the lay people, as if my teacher has no value. Please forgive me if what I have said is wrong or improper in any way, but I have done so with the best of intentions, and only because I have the greatest reverence and respect for Venerable Ajaan. After he had finished speaking and respectfully saluted, Venerable Ajaan sat quietly, almost as if he had not heard, and all the other bhikkhus kept quiet and still, waiting. Then Venerable Ajaan began to speak in a calm, level voice, saying, "The Lord Buddha was supremely clever and wise, and the bliss which he discovered, and which comes from wisdom, was superior to everything known in the worlds. The Buddha was the first to discover it, and the teaching which he gave to those companions who were also seeking the way was beyond the clouds, in other words, beyond all conventional suppositions, sammati. Nobody else could practice the way and teach as the Lord did, for the Dhamma teaching, the sasana Dhamma, which came from his mouth, is a middle way Dhamma, Majjhima Dhamma, which is always appropriate and well suited to people in all ages and places. It did not conflict with the truth, which would have made it blameworthy to his associates who were looking for a reasoned teaching to show them how to go onwards for the purpose of salvation and safety by following this teaching. In his practice, the Lord did everything with carefulness and circumspection. In his experience of Dhamma, he experienced it with the carefulness and circumspection of Dhamma, so that the teaching which he taught was also done with carefulness and circumspection in accordance with the principles of the Sāsada, the great teacher who was the first teacher, and it has never been found to be deficient or defective in any of its parts as the religious teaching, the Sāsana Dhamma of the Lord. Therefore, if we who are just practicing this teaching compare what we are doing with the energetic striving and the accompanying difficulties and torments which the Lord endured for the sake of his followers, all of us would appear weak and flabby, just waiting to eat our next meal, for we do not have any great difficulties to contend with at all. Just think about the Lord and how he led the Sāvakas to practice the way. Did he lead them to be conceited, proud, and playful, or to be content and satisfied with what they have got, and glad to have whatever happens to come in the way of requisites and other things that are of use? Did he lead them into ways of plentiful abundance of things, as if turning them into living corpses possessed by the kilesas and tanha, or into the way of having few possessions and freedom from all worry? Did he lead them by being thrifty and by curbing those desires which draw them on and intimidate their hearts, so that they are never satisfied and never have enough, or by being extravagant and distracted because of carelessness and lack of mindfulness? This is enough for you to be able to see that those bhikkhus who turn themselves into such conceited and extravagant people are difficult to look after, both for themselves and for other people. They have big mouths and large stomachs, and even though the lay supporters are many and generous, they cannot keep up with the kilesas in the hearts of such bhikkhus. Keeping and looking after things which are of such a nature that one can see potentials for further use and value in them, and being economical and thrifty in all forms of wealth, so that they will always last a long time, by not disturbing them and speculating with them and opening a possibility of their all being lost. This is the way that people who are rational and clever act and do things. Such people are not conceited, puffed up and vain, nor do they show off without having any real substance in themselves, for to be like that would lead to their wealth being all frittered and wasted away, however much they started out with. None of that which should have brought them enough profit to form the root and basis of life and future virtue would remain, and they would not even have the pittance of a poor man who has an economical nature and trains himself to be thrifty. But those who laid down roots and a basis of behavior which is good and gracious, and which gives the world a way to think and to set up basic principles about wealth and the chitta from that time on, were not wastefully extravagant. They were not spendthrifts led on by ambition without ever being able to restrain themselves all through their lives. For whoever is foolish enough to promote such strange thoughts and to act on them will become a dead person of the kind who has no graveyard to go to, and leading all his progeny to go the same way also. Venerable Ajaan then asked that bhikkhu, "Have you ever seen how a monkey takes food which is given to it by a person, and how it eats the food?" He replied, "Yes, I have seen it, but I have never noticed how it takes the food, nor how it eats it." To which Venerable Ajaan replied, "You haven't even noticed how a monkey eats, and you are not able to answer me on this point. Then why is it that you are bringing into question the way that I use my requisites, without putting forward any good reasons which should be worth listening to? I am always ready to listen to words of both praise and criticism, because the Dhamma of the Lord Buddha is to be found everywhere, and even words of praise and criticism are Dhamma, if one examines them impartially and lets them be Dhamma. But if one does not examine them properly, they become the way of the world and a cause of delusion, both words of praise and of blame. You have not even noticed the way of living and eating of the monkeys sufficiently to know something of their nature, so how can you know anything about the way of living and utilizing things of the Lord Buddha and the Sāvakas, and the way they practiced in their capacity as the great teacher, the Sāsada, and the sons of the Sakya, who can be a sure refuge to the world? Do you want to hear some of the ways in which the natures of monkeys are different from those of people, or not? If you don't want to hear about the nature of monkeys to add to your mindfulness and wisdom, but want to fly up into the sky to know about the Aryan ways and customs of the Sasana, I am afraid it would be climbing up too high, and I don't want to give any such explanation to you." "I have never heard anyone talk about the nature and characteristics of monkeys," the bhikkhu replied, "but when Venerable Ajaan asked me about it, I became curious, and I would like to know how they are different from human beings. Before now I have seen them often in passing, but I got tired of them and did not like to look at them, because they are animals which by nature are disorderly, and they cannot keep still and live quietly together. But I don't know anything more profound than this about them." After this, Venerable Ajaan went on to explain to this bhikkhu about the nature of monkeys, saying, "Monkeys are like people who have disorderly habits, and who don't like living quietly and peacefully in the manner and way of Dhamma as gentle people do. They are animals who like to act playfully, and this is true whether small or large, and male or female, and this trait runs through the whole of the monkey family. Their inconsequential playfulness knows no bounds or limits, like people who have never been trained in moral ways. Even when they become old and gray, or white-haired like wool, they never know the meaning of calm and peace, what causes it and how, and one can never trust them, even when they have been brought up and lived with people the whole time until they become adults, for their natures and characteristics remain unchanged, and they show no interest in taking up and assuming any human characteristics at all. They were born as monkeys, they live as monkeys, and they die as monkeys, and they never pick up any other traits. People who take up and assume the characteristics of the monkeys as their own are therefore much worse, more evil and violent than monkeys, and they cause a lot of trouble and do widespread harm in the world, far beyond what monkeys are capable of doing. When I was staying in a cave where lots of monkeys were milling about, I saw for myself what they were like. This was when I first went out wandering and doing the ascetic practices, the Tutangas, and I had not learnt enough about the nature of these animals. When they came around searching for food in front of the mouth of the cave where I was staying, they were, at first, afraid, but after they had seen enough of me to realize that I was not dangerous to them, they came by looking for food almost every day. Seeing these monkeys coming in large numbers, I felt sorry for them as they swarmed about, climbing up and down in the area in front of the cave. They were both large and small ones, and none of them were interested in this person. After I had eaten my food in the morning, I would give them what was left over, sharing it out between them. When it was time for them to come, there were bananas, rice, and fruit of various kinds, which I laid out on an outcrop of rock, so that they could come and take it themselves. As soon as I had finished putting it out and turned my back, they all went for the food, scrambling and fighting each other for it in complete confusion and turmoil, without any thought or fear of me at all. The next day, they came earlier and waited for me to put out food for them. After only 2 or 3 days of this, they showed themselves up for what they really were in no uncertain way, without any deference to me or fear. They all came in, jumping all over the place and searching for food where I was staying, until all my possessions were scattered all over the place. This happened while I was away getting food in Paṭipadā. But also, when I was there, some of them even came up baring their teeth as if they were about to bite me, while moving their mouths and twisting their eyebrows into a menacing expression, trying to frighten me. As if to say, "We monkeys are much quicker and more slick than human beings, and people cannot compete with us. If you don't want to be hurt, you better not cause any trouble, or we are likely to jump on you without warning." I had to use various ways to scare them off, until they all decided to go away from that district. After that, I learned not to give food to any of the monkeys, even though I felt sorry for them, nor did I make any gesture indicating intimacy with them, in the way that I had previously done. Therefore, they never came and bothered me any more. These are animals that cannot be trusted at all. Even if one feels sorry for them and looks after them well, they are still monkeys who are restlessly playful and tricky, who know nothing of virtue nor recognize that one is helping them. When I gave food out to them, they all ran and crowded around me in a most obnoxious way. They were so greedy for the food that some of them almost bit my hand, for they quickly came in snatching and grabbing while jumping excitedly about. It was really a loathsome spectacle to see the way they crowded around while shouting "Gok, gok," and trying to intimidate me, even while I was giving them food out of kindness. Monkeys are really the most dreadful and irritating animals. Have you ever noticed what those monkeys are like that people look after at home, and when one stretches one's hand out to give some food to them, how they react, both to this food and to the person giving it? The bhikkhu replied, saying, "I don't know, because all I did was give them food, and did not notice, while doing so, how they reacted or what characteristics they displayed." Venerable Ajaan continued with his explanation, saying, "It makes little difference who gives food to this class of animal, for they are mainly interested in what they are going to get right now. Their eyes will be fixed firmly on the food while they jump up and down, but in a level open place they run back and forth with their hands stretched out to snatch the food from the hand of the person who is feeding them. Once they have got hold of it, they quickly peel it, tear it open, and eat it immediately, while their eyes roll about looking here and there restlessly, as well as looking at the fruit in their hands while breaking it apart, biting, chewing, and swallowing it. If they see that there is still some food left in that person's hand and a chance that they may get some more, they quickly chew up what they have got, stuffing it into their cheeks, while keeping their eyes on his hand and stretching out their hands to ask for more. If he gives them some more food, they quickly eat and swallow some and stuff some into their cheeks again, and any that is left over they just throw away. Then they stretch out their hands again, asking for more. Their begging can never be satisfied, however much one gives them, and they will go on and on until there is none left. Only then do they stop and turn to chewing up the food stored in their cheeks. Monkeys are very extravagant and wasteful animals, and they are never satisfied with what a person gives them when they can get more out of him. Even though their stomachs are quite small, like other animals of the same body size, yet their greed, extravagance, and wastefulness are so great that it is hard to find any other animal to equal them. You will probably understand that I brought up the ways of the monkeys as a kind of simile for a comparison with your request for me to dispose of my old possessions and change them for new ones, even though the old ones are still usable. In other words, you are asking me to act like those monkeys, and to accept monkeys as the great teacher, the Sāsada, to teach me in place of the Sāsana of the Lord Buddha, who knew what was appropriate and sufficient in all things, because the manner of acting which you asked me to practice is the way that the monkeys act, which accords with their animal nature, which knows nothing of what is meant by Dhamma. But someone who knows something of what is meant by Dhamma should think and consider his own position as well as the position of Dhamma in regard to what is appropriate for him to do or not do. To speak with the intention of promoting what is good is praiseworthy, but the value in your intention is not compatible with the loss of Dhamma which would be incurred. This means such forms of Dhamma as being content with little, for this Dhamma has always brought calm and peace to the world since long ago. This is because it is a form of Dhamma well suited to those in the world who are contented and glad to keep within bounds, and who have limiting conditions in their hearts which they should cherish and keep close to, and strive to practice and follow gladly, not letting the value, the essence which comes from the Dhamma, slip away and be lost to their regret. You should think deeply and carefully about the sasana, and about the owner of the sasana, the Buddha, as to what sort of person he was. Did the Lord go along with the way of the world, or what way did he go? In teaching the sasana, how did he teach so that the world was ready and willing to accept and pay homage to him, and to follow him in practice right down to the present day in people such as ourselves here? The sasana Dhamma which he taught continuously in all its details is the complete and perfect Sawakata Dhamma, supremely taught Dhamma. It is also the Niyanika Dhamma, the Dhamma which can reduce and eliminate dukkha and anxiety, both great and small, entirely in anyone who practices properly, following his teaching in a full and complete manner. Moreover, you should think deeply and carefully in accordance with the principles of the sasana, whether someone who turns himself into a wealthy, opulent, and famous person who excites the envy of people in the world in this age has more or less dukkha and worry both in his heart and body than someone who lives a steady, unassuming life, doing what is necessary in accordance with his circumstances. I am not very well educated, but it seems obvious to me that the one who becomes opulent, puffing himself up bigger than the world, is going the right way to kill himself, without realizing that he is his own executioner. When people think of going beyond what is sufficient and reasonable, they are bound to make ever-increasing trouble and disturbances for themselves until they cannot find any calm and peace of body or mind, for they always feel uncertain about the future, so that then the heart must think how to increase and inflate their businesses more and more, whatever kind of business it may be, until they have no time to rest and take it easy. They are like water which is turbid and muddy, and cannot be used for washing or anything else. So their minds and bodies must go round and round like a machine to achieve or get what they set out for. If they cannot, they become anxious and perturbed, because their efforts cannot keep up with their desires, like water flowing over the river banks. When they cannot get what they want by straight and honorable means, they will go in for crooked and dishonorable ways. Whenever they can steal, they steal. Whenever they can snatch and grab, they snatch and grab. Whenever they can hold up anyone at gunpoint to rob them, they do so. Whenever they can cheat, blackmail, hold to ransom, or even kill people, they do so. They have no shame or fear of the world's opinion of them, nor are they afraid of doing evil things and the kamma they make, because they are driven by their overpowering desires.
Finally, they are caught by the authorities and put away into jail, where they experience the results of their own greedy desires.
Or else they may be killed before they are caught by the authorities, and thrown away into the jungle or into a swamp, and nothing more is heard of them, the body having disappeared forever, which is more degraded than an animal, and is a sorry and inhuman way to end. This is the evil of monkey ways, for they are animals which are always in want and never satisfied with anything, even though their mouths and stomachs are relatively no larger than those of other animals. But monkeys will die for the desire in their hearts rather than from hunger for food, and when anyone takes up those ways which lead to self-destruction, such as those which the monkeys use, whether a bhikkhu or layperson, they must be abnormal and quite different from normal people in the world who have a sense of what is enough. If a bhikkhu is like this, he will strive to find and get the various requisites of a monk, including money, in all sorts of ways with a restless intent instead of having a sense of shame or an interest in the Dhamma and Vinaya, which is the good and proper way for one who has gone forth, a samarna. This is what makes the lay followers and supporters feel disillusioned and fed up, and wherever such a bhikkhu goes, the lay people avoid him, even though they have plenty of faith in Dhamma in their hearts. But they avoid him and keep away from him, because they cannot stand the tricky ways of begging and bothering them in asking for money or other things of this skilled and clever bhikkhu. Venerable Ajaan asked the bhikkhu, "Do you know what that bhikkhu was skilled and clever at doing?" "I don't know," he replied. So Venerable Ajaan told him, "He was skilled just in asking for things all the time, for if any bhikkhu becomes extravagantly minded, with many wants and desires, and he goes about searching for personal wealth, he will be like this in everything, having no shame in what he is doing. He just has the intention and the fixed aim of getting money, saying, 'Please give me that.' In fact, his meditation practice is the repetition of 'please give me that' and nothing else. He has no need of reciting the chants or meditating by holding in mind a word or a long saying like all the others who practice meditation. He has just this one saying, which has caused enough disturbance in the world already. If he goes on doing this much more, it will surely break up the world,